Rain hammered against the windows of the Parker family home as Ethan Parker stood silently near the dining table, gripping the edge of his chair so tightly his knuckles turned white. The smell of roasted chicken filled the room, but nobody was eating anymore. His father's face burned red with anger. "You're 27 years old," Daniel Parker snapped. 27, unemployed, and still living under my roof. Ethan swallowed hard. "I told you already, Dad. I lost the job because I took time off when Grandma got sick." "Oh, here we go again," Ryan muttered from across the table, rolling his eyes. Always another excuse. Ethan looked at his younger brother. Ryan leaned back comfortably in his expensive hoodie, the one Ethan secretly knew their parents had paid for. Everything had always come easier for Ryan: better treatment, more support, endless second chances. But Ethan, he was only noticed when something went wrong. "I stayed with Grandma because somebody had to," Ethan said quietly. "You barely visited her. That's enough." His mother, Carol, interrupted coldly. She folded her napkin with perfect calm while avoiding Ethan's eyes. "Your father is under enough stress already." Ethan felt something crack inside him, stress. For 8 months, he had driven Grandma to hospitals, cooked her meals, and sat beside her bed while she cried in pain at night. Meanwhile, Ryan spent weekends partying with friends while their parents pretended not to notice, and now they acted like Ethan was the burden. Daniel slammed his fist onto the table so hard the plates rattled. "You have 1 day to get out of this house." The room fell silent except for the storm outside. Ethan stared at his father, certain he had heard wrong. "What? You heard me," Daniel growled. "I'm done supporting a grown man who contributes nothing." "Dad," Ethan's voice trembled. "I've been applying everywhere. I'm trying—" "No," Ryan interrupted with a smirk. "You're failing." Ethan looked toward his mother, hoping, just once, she would defend him. But Carol only sighed tiredly. "Maybe leaving will force you to grow up." Those words hurt more than anything. For a moment, Ethan couldn't breathe. This was his family, the people he had sacrificed for, the people he loved even when they treated him like he mattered less. And now they were throwing him away like garbage. Slowly, Ethan stood from the table. "Okay," he whispered. Daniel frowned, almost surprised Ethan wasn't arguing. "You have until tomorrow evening," he said firmly. Ethan nodded once and walked upstairs without another word. The second he closed his bedroom door, the pain hit him like a wave. His hands shook as he looked around the small room he had lived in since childhood. Baseball trophies still sat on the shelf. Old family photos hung on the wall. There was even a faded birthday card from Grandma resting beside his lamp. Tears blurred his vision. He sat on the bed and covered his face, trying not to break apart completely. "How did it become this?" he whispered. A few hours later, Ethan packed his clothes into 2 old duffel bags. Downstairs, he could hear laughter from the living room. Ryan was watching television, like nothing had happened. Around midnight, Ethan quietly walked toward the kitchen for water when he heard voices coming from his parents' bedroom. "He can't find out about the inheritance," Carol whispered nervously. Ethan froze. "Inheritance." Daniel lowered his voice. "Relax, the money's already gone." Ethan's heartbeat stopped. "That money helped Ryan's business," Daniel continued. "Besides, Ethan would have wasted it anyway." Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. Grandma had left him money. And they stole it. He stepped backward slowly before they could hear him. His chest tightened so painfully he thought he might collapse. Everything suddenly made sense. The coldness, the guilt, the constant pressure to leave. They weren't just abandoning him. They were hiding something. By sunrise, Ethan loaded his bags into his old car parked outside the house. Rain still poured from the dark sky. Before getting in, he looked back one last time at the home where he had spent his entire life. Nobody came outside. Nobody stopped him, not even his mother. Ethan sat behind the steering wheel, tears slipping silently down his face as thunder echoed overhead. For the first time in his life, he truly understood something terrifying. He was completely alone. But as he started the engine and drove into the storm, another feeling slowly rose beneath the heartbreak. Determination. They thought they had destroyed him. They had no idea this was only the beginning. The first night Ethan slept in his car felt colder than any winter he had ever known. Rain tapped endlessly against the windshield while he curled beneath a thin blanket in the back seat, trying to ignore the ache in his stomach. His phone battery had almost died, he had less than $80 left, and every few minutes his mind replayed his father's voice. "You have one day to get out of this house." By morning, his entire body hurt. Ethan parked near a gas station restroom, washed his face, and stared at himself in the cracked mirror. Dark circles hung beneath his eyes. His beard had grown uneven. He barely recognized the exhausted man staring back at him. But he refused to go back. Even after learning about the inheritance, part of him still wanted to believe there had been some misunderstanding. Yet deep down he knew the truth. His parents had chosen Ryan over him long ago, and now he was on his own. The next few weeks became a blur of rejection and survival. Ethan applied everywhere: restaurants, warehouses, delivery companies, repair shops. Some places never called back. Others looked at his worn clothes and dismissed him within minutes. One manager glanced at his resume and laughed. "You left your last job without notice. My grandmother was dying." Ethan explained quietly. The manager shrugged. "Not my problem." Those words stayed with Ethan the entire day. Eventually, he found temporary work unloading trucks at a grocery warehouse during the night shift. The pay was terrible, but it was enough to buy cheap meals and rent a tiny motel room once or twice a week so he could shower properly. Every night his muscles screamed with exhaustion. Every morning he wondered how much longer he could survive like this. Still, Ethan kept going. One evening after work, his old car suddenly broke down near a small repair garage on the edge of town. Smoke poured from the hood as Ethan cursed under his breath. A tall older man stepped outside the garage, wiping grease from his hands. "You look like you've had a rough month," the man said. Ethan let out a tired laugh, more like a rough life. The man introduced himself as Walter Bennett, owner of Bennett Auto Repair. While checking the engine, Walter asked a few questions, and Ethan casually explained what was wrong with the car. Walter paused. "You know engines?" "A little," Ethan answered. "I used to help my grandfather fix cars when I was younger." After listening carefully, Walter handed Ethan a wrench. "Show me." For the next hour, Ethan worked beside him in silence. Despite his exhaustion, his hands moved confidently. He diagnosed the issue faster than one of the shop employees. Walter raised an eyebrow. "You ever think about doing this full-time?" Ethan shook his head. "Nobody's exactly offering opportunities." Walter studied him for a long moment before speaking. "Be here tomorrow morning at 7. Ethan blinked. "For what?" "For work." That single moment changed everything. The job paid little at first, but Ethan treated every task seriously. He arrived early, stayed late, and learned everything he could. Unlike his father, Walter never mocked him. And like Ryan, he never made Ethan feel small. Weeks turned into months. Slowly, Ethan began helping the struggling garage improve business. He created online advertisements, organized inventory, and introduced cheaper repair systems that doubled profits. Walter was stunned. "You're smarter than you realize, kid." For the first time in years, Ethan felt proud of himself. Meanwhile, back at the Parker house, Ryan continued wasting money trying to impress people with fake success. Expensive watches, parties, failed investments. He burned through cash carelessly, while Daniel and Carol defended every mistake he made. Whenever Ethan's name came up, Ryan laughed. "He's probably living under a bridge by now." None of them knew Ethan was rebuilding himself piece by piece. One snowy evening, Walter handed Ethan a sealed envelope after closing the garage. "It came from a law office," he said. Confused, Ethan opened it carefully. Inside were legal documents connected to his grandmother's estate. His hands trembled as he read the first page. According to the official records, his grandmother had left nearly everything to him before her death, including money his parents had secretly taken. Ethan stared at the papers for a long time, anger slowly burning through his chest. For months he had blamed himself, believed he was worthless, believed maybe his parents were right. But now he finally understood the truth. They hadn't thrown him out because he failed. They threw him out because they were afraid he would discover what they had done. 3 years later, Ethan Parker stood in front of a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the glowing city skyline. The same man who once slept in a broken car during thunderstorms now owned one of the fastest-growing automotive technology companies in the state. His office sat on the top floor of Bennett Innovations, a company that had expanded from Walter's tiny repair garage into a multimillion-dollar business. But despite the success, some scars never fully disappeared. Ethan adjusted the sleeves of his black suit as employees hurried through the elegant ballroom below. Tonight's charity event was the largest his company had ever hosted. Business owners, reporters, investors, and city officials filled the building with excitement. Walter approached beside him with a proud smile. Nervous, Ethan chuckled softly a little. "You earned this," Walter said firmly. "Don't forget that." Ethan nodded, though part of him still remembered the frightened young man abandoned by his own family. As the event began, cameras flashed while guests applauded Ethan's speech about helping struggling families rebuild their lives after hardship. Ironically, every word came from personal pain he never publicly discussed. Then suddenly, his smile faded. Near the back entrance stood 3 familiar faces. Daniel, Carol, Ryan. For a second, Ethan genuinely thought he was imagining things. His mother's mouth slowly fell open as she stared at the giant company logo above the stage. "Bennett Innovations," she whispered. Ryan's face twisted with disbelief. No way. Daniel looked frozen, because the successful CEO standing under the lights was the same son they had thrown away like garbage. Ethan's chest tightened painfully. 3 years, not one phone call, not one apology, and now they stood there staring at him only because he had become successful. Ryan recovered first and forced a fake smile. "Wow, Ethan, look at you." Ethan looked at him calmly. "Ryan," Carol stepped forward emotionally. "Honey, we didn't know this was your company." Walter appeared beside Ethan, immediately sensing the tension. "These people bothering you?" he asked quietly. Before Ethan could answer, Daniel suddenly straightened his jacket and smiled proudly toward nearby guests. "That's my son up there," he announced loudly. Ethan felt sick hearing the words, his son now after abandoning him. Several guests turned toward the family curiously. Ryan leaned closer and whispered bitterly, "You think you're special because you got lucky." Ethan met his eyes calmly. Luck didn't sleep in a car during winter. Ryan's expression darkened instantly. Then Carol grabbed Ethan's arm softly. "We should talk privately," she pleaded. "Families have misunderstandings sometimes." Ethan slowly removed her hand. "A misunderstanding," he repeated quietly. "You stole Grandma's inheritance and threw me out before I could find out." The color vanished from Carol's face. Daniel's voice sharpened immediately. "This isn't the place, no," Ethan said firmly. "You lost the right to choose the place years ago." Nearby conversations slowly stopped as people sensed the growing tension. Ryan scoffed loudly. "You can't prove anything." Ethan reached into his jacket and calmly pulled out a folder. "I already did." Ryan's confidence disappeared. Inside the folder were copies of legal documents, bank transfers, and signed estate records proving Ethan's grandmother had left her savings entirely to him before she died. Several months earlier, Ethan had quietly hired investigators and attorneys. He never wanted revenge through screaming or violence. He wanted truth, and now the truth stood exposed for everyone to see. Daniel's hands shook slightly. "Ethan, listen, you made me believe I was worthless." Ethan interrupted. "I spent months blaming myself while you used Grandma's money to fund Ryan's failed business." Ryan stepped forward angrily. "Don't act innocent. You always thought you were better than us." "No," Ethan replied calmly. "I just wanted to be loved like family." That sentence hit harder than any insult. Carol suddenly burst into tears. But Ethan felt strangely calm. For years he had imagined this moment differently. He thought revenge would feel powerful, that exposing them would erase the pain. Instead, he only felt sadness, because no amount of success could repair what they destroyed. Security quietly approached, unsure whether to intervene. Ethan looked at his parents one final time. "You don't need to leave," he said calmly. "Enjoy the party. Daniel looked stunned. "You're not throwing us out?" Ethan gave a small, painful smile. "No," he answered softly, "I'm not like you." Then Ethan turned and walked back toward the stage while the ballroom erupted into whispers around them. And for the first time in his life, the Parker family finally understood something. The son they discarded had become stronger without them. The scandal destroyed the Parker family faster than anyone expected. Within weeks of the charity event, rumors spread everywhere. Relatives stopped answering Daniel's calls. Friends quietly distanced themselves. Ryan's business partners disappeared the moment legal investigators uncovered how Grandma Parker's inheritance had been used. The proud image Daniel spent his whole life building collapsed overnight. And Ryan, he vanished first. One morning, Carol woke up to find his bedroom empty. No goodbye letter, no apology, just a missing suitcase and a disconnected phone number. The same son they had protected at all costs abandoned them without hesitation. Ethan heard about everything through mutual acquaintances, but he stayed silent. He focused on work, expanded the company, and tried convincing himself the past no longer mattered. Yet late at night, memories still haunted him. His mother kissing Ryan proudly after baseball games while forgetting Ethan's birthdays. His father mocking every dream he ever had. The stormy night he drove away believing nobody in the world loved him. Some wounds healed slowly, others never fully disappeared. Then one rainy evening, Ethan received a phone call that changed everything. "Mr. Parker?" a nervous voice asked. "Yes, this is Memorial Hospital. Your father suffered a stroke this afternoon." Ethan froze. The nurse explained Daniel had collapsed at home. Carol was alone and overwhelmed. There had been complications caused by stress and high blood pressure. For several seconds Ethan said nothing. Part of him wanted to hang up. Part of him remembered every cruel word his father ever spoke. But another part, the part Grandma once nurtured with kindness, still cared. An hour later, Ethan walked through the quiet hospital hallway carrying a bouquet of flowers he almost didn't buy. Carol sat outside the room looking exhausted and broken. The moment she saw Ethan, tears flooded her eyes. "You came," she whispered shakily. Ethan nodded once. His mother looked older now, smaller somehow. The confident woman who once stood silently while he packed his bags had disappeared. "I didn't think you would," she admitted. "Neither did I," Ethan replied honestly. Inside the hospital room, machines beeped softly beside Daniel's bed. The strong, intimidating man Ethan feared his entire childhood now looked weak and fragile beneath pale blankets. Daniel slowly opened his eyes. The moment he saw Ethan standing there, his face crumpled with emotion. For the first time in Ethan's life, his father looked ashamed. "You shouldn't be here," Daniel said weakly. Ethan placed the flowers near the window. Probably not. Silence filled the room. Rain tapped gently against the glass outside. Finally, Daniel spoke again, his voice trembling. "I failed you." Ethan looked down quietly. "I spent so many years trying to make Ryan successful," Daniel whispered painfully. "And the whole time I ignored the son who actually had strength." Carol covered her face, crying silently. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "When you left that house," he continued, "I thought you'd come back begging eventually, but instead you became everything I never thought you could be." The words hurt more than Ethan expected, not because of anger, because all he ever wanted was to hear his father believe in him. "Even once, I was angry," Ethan admitted quietly. "For a long time, you had every right." Daniel's breathing became shaky. "I don't expect forgiveness, son." That word again, son. Now it sounded filled with regret instead of pride. Ethan stared out the rain-covered window, battling emotions he couldn't explain. Hatred would have been easier, cleaner, but seeing his parents broken and alone only made him tired of carrying pain for so many years. A few days later, Ethan quietly paid several of his parents' debts and arranged a small apartment for them after the bank took their house. When Carol discovered what he had done, she broke down completely. "After everything we did, why would you help us?" Ethan stood near the apartment doorway silently for a moment before answering. "Because I refused to become the kind of person who only loves when it's convenient." Carol cried harder. As the sun slowly rose outside, Ethan turned toward the door. His father's weak voice stopped him one final time. "Ethan," he looked back. Daniel's eyes shimmered with tears. "I'm proud of you." For years Ethan imagined hearing those words would heal everything. But instead they simply brought peace, not perfect peace, not forgotten pain, just enough to finally let go. Without another word, Ethan stepped outside into the morning sunlight, leaving behind the bitterness that once controlled his life. Because in the end, his greatest revenge was never wealth, success, or exposing the truth. It was surviving their cruelty and still choosing to remain kind.